Hello, everyone. We want to thank everyone around the world who is watching and listening to this podcast. I just got some new analytics, and there are people from countries all over the world who are watching or listening. Last week, 27,000 in the U.S. Second biggest country, guess?
Canada.
Germany.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And even though they're in the middle of Russia and Ukraine are in a war right now, and we have 90 people in Russia and 31 people in Ukraine.
Wow.
So, hello, you guys. Sorry you're in a war. Why don't you just seek peace without drugs or alcohol or something?
Yep.
You can go. I'm Randall Carlisle, your host on Odyssey House Journals, and we thank you for tuning in. Nicole Slack is our co-host, and Charisse Gull is our guest today.
Hello.
Hi, Charisse. You know what I like about it? It's really fun having people in recovery coming and talking about the podcast, because you approached me about this, and what I love is the fact that people in recovery are generally very proud of the fact that they were in recovery, that they went through that battle, and which you did. Maybe you can tell us a little about you're 5 years sober
Next
now.
week.
Next week.
Yep.
Congrats.
Right. Way to go.
Thanks.
Yeah, so tell me about your life.
Well, I grew up here in Salt Lake City, Utah. My mom had me at a very young age. She was a child. She was a teenager when she had me. She raised me the best that she could. I was never really got involved in any type of drugs until I was 29 years old, actually.
A late bloomer.
A late bloomer, for sure.
Nicole is as well. When did you start your trip with alcohol?
Early to mid 30s.
Yep.
So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Because most of the people we have say, well, I did this when I was a teenager, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I didn't get into drugs until I was about 28, 29 years old. Excuse me. When I was 18 years old, I got married for the first time. We had 2 kids, and things just didn't work out for any other reason than we were just too young. Our kids now are 18, and the other one is almost 20, and their dad and I we're still best friends. We still do Christmas together, all that stuff together. After that marriage ended, I ended up getting with another man who, at the time, I was unaware was quite narcissistic. And we had, for the first couple of years, our relationship it seemed really well. And then things turned to a lot of physical and mental and sexual abuse. And during that marriage, the first time I ever did, it was meth. He held me down and shoved it up my nose. And that was it. That was the first time that I ever got the joy of doing drugs.
Well, obviously that was not the way you got into it was not pleasurable. But did meth seem pleasurable to you?
Yes, yeah, it did. At first, it was maybe every 6 months. It was just recreational and it was fun here and there. And then as that relationship continued to get worse and worse and worse, the addiction then started to get worse and worse and worse. I finally left him in February of 2015. And there were a lot of interminglings of that relationship. So I had my children, he had his children. We raised our children together, and he knew the one thing that could hurt me the most was to make sure I never saw his kids again. And so in that, I didn't know how to handle things. I didn't love myself anymore. I felt like I was not worth anything on this planet anymore. And so I just did more and more drugs. Then I found out how to sell drugs.
A new profession.
A new profession. I did a lot of field work for sure. I did. And so in my addiction, I actually ended up meeting my husband now. We actually got married 2 months ago today.
Wow.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, you've got a lot to celebrate. A new marriage, 5 years of sobriety.
Yep. And I'm just going to get into, we're not going to talk about the addiction because we've all been addicted. We know what that's like.
How'd you finally end it, I guess is what I'd like to hear.
5 years ago, I decided to take a trip to Mexico with my now husband. And we, well, originally it wasn't going to be a trip to Mexico. I had gotten this deal to take a car to California, drop it off, and then pick up another car, and they were going to pay me a couple $1,000s for it. And I was like, sure, why not? That sounds great.
Transporting drugs.
But
right?
there was no drugs in the car.
Oh, okay.
So when I got to California, the person that I was doing this for gave me a call and said, hey, do you want to come into Mexico? Beachfront property. It'll be great. Sure, why not? So we go into Mexico. And it was true. It was in Rosarito, Mexico. And there was beachfront property. There was a cute little condo. And I remember when we got there, the guy pulled out one of those big giant totes, just pulled it out. And it was full of meth. And he said, do you want to make some more money? And I said, yes, I do. And ended up strapping my body with a large amount of drugs and crossing the U.S.-Mexican border, walking across the border. The first night it happened, I got away with it. And
was that at the San Diego place?
In San Ysidro.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I had gotten away with it. And I decided, well, the guy calls me and said, you want to double your money? And I said, yes, why not? Let's do it again. Because I can say all the years that I did drugs, walking across the border I was literally strapped from my knees to my chest, just strapped for drugs. And that was the best high that I had ever had, the adrenaline that I got from just walking across. So I decided I was going to go back again the next day and do it. My husband said, you're stupid, you're greedy, don't do it. You know, and both of us are just so messed up in our addiction right now. And he just wanted to get back home with all these drugs and sell them and just make all this money. And I wanted more money. And so I went back. But I remember before I went back into Mexico, and at this point, like I'm just walking this whole time. Before I get back into Mexico, I remember we stopped at a Starbucks, and my husband had given me a shard of meth and said, go ahead and go in the bathroom. And so I went in the bathroom and I did a line of meth. And I remember when I did it, I looked in the mirror and I remember looking in the mirror, not seeing me anymore. I didn't know who I was. And I said, please let this be the last amount of dope I ever do and help me stop enabling him, meaning my husband. Like, because I knew in our addictions, money is everything to us. We fight all the time. And that's what I said. And I left. It was a Starbucks, like I said. And so then I go and I walk back into Mexico. The guy picks me up and we noodle around, have to go get a new outfit because the cameras can't see the same outfit, you know. And this time, though, my husband wasn't coming with me because he just knew something was going to happen. And so I decided while I was there, I was going to have some Four Locos, some blackout edition Four Locos. And so I was really high and really drunk. And the guy's wife strapped me with drugs again. And she had one package that she wanted me to put, you know, where it doesn't go. And I told her, no, I have morals. I'm not going to put it there.
Thank God for standards.
Yeah, thank goodness for the standards. And so she had duct taped about 4.5 kilos in my bra of meth. And then I had 2 pairs of Spanx. So I put that little package in between the 2 pairs of Spanx just on my stomach. And the guy drops me back off at the border and I start walking and there's a little officer and he says, excuse me, ma'am. And I was like, me? And he says, yeah. And I said, yeah. And he goes, what do you have on you? I said, nothing. And he goes, well, my dog is alerting that you have something. And I said, no, I don't have anything. And so he pulls a female police officer over to me and they take me into this big cement room that's at the border. And she's just feeling along. She doesn't feel anything. And then, you know, there's a space between the bottom of my bra and my Spanx. And her hand was a little cold. So I shifted and she felt the duct tape. And she said, duct tape, huh? And I said, yeah, I'm large chested. So I just needed to tape them down. And at this point I knew I was caught. So I unstrapped everything And the package that was in my Spanx, she pointed out, she said, look at that. And there was a slit in the package, and there was some like a brown powdery substance. And at the time I had no idea what it was, because I had agreed only to bring meth across the border. So from there, I had to sit at the border for about 8.5 hours. The FBI came in and questioned me. They asked me if I was going to tell any names or anything like that. And they said, what are you going to do? Go into Mexico and get him? Like, no, I'm not. I don't even know the guy's name. So I ended up signing right then and there an indictment waiver, meaning nobody could ever be indicted on my case. I was taking full responsibility for everything. And then a couple hours later, they put me in a van and they took me straight to MCC federal prison.
Wow.
Yep. And so while I was there, I tried to call my mom, and she didn't answer for the first 33 days. When she finally answered, I remember it just like it was yesterday. She said, well, you got yourself into a pickle this time, didn't you? I said,
That's an understatement.
I said, I sure did.
Did she know you were dealing? No.
No, she knew I was doing drugs, but she really wanted to deny it because, you know, she's my mom. She taught me better than that. You know, she worked her tail off to make sure that I had such a good life, and she did. But, you know, I definitely attribute all of my addiction to the terrible narcissistic relationship that I was in. Oh, my phone was ringing. Sorry. And so no, she didn't know until then. And when she said, you got yourself into a pickle, didn't you? I said, yep, I did. And she said, what are you going to do about it? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, you got a lot of time to think. And then she hung up the phone.
How much time were you facing?
When I finally got to talk to my first lawyer, first of all, I thought I was going to get a slap on the wrist, because prior to this, I had a speeding ticket in my life. Like, never been in trouble. I'm 34 years old at this time, never been in trouble. So I'm like, it'll be fine. Get a slap on the wrist. I meet with my first lawyer, and he tells me that I am looking at a minimum mandatory 10 to life sentence.
Whoa.
Yep. Minimum mandatory. So that kind of...
Because it's federal. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep. And because I found out at that point also, I brought across the measurement of what was on the top part of my body was 4.5 kilos of meth. And then there was about 3.5 grams of heroin and 1 point something grams of powdered fentanyl that was in the little slit. So I think back to it now and I think, oh, they didn't even want me to make it across the border, because like how they had wrapped the drugs up was they put them in plastic and then they wrapped them with saran wrap, and then they put them in one of those, I don't even know what they're called, but like the things that go in your counter with the freezer, and they suck all the air out. Yeah.
Airtight?
Airtight, yeah. And so like there's no way that a perfect slit all the way through would be there unless it was purposely put there. And so at the time though, when I got caught, fentanyl was not at the top of the list of danger. Meth was. And so
You brought kilos of that.
I did. I brought kilos of it. Yeah. And so while I'm there, I didn't like this lawyer. He was not trying to work with me. And so I said, I need a new lawyer. So I ended up getting a new lawyer. And the lawyer that I had got, he was so great. He was like, I think I can get you 6 years. I'm like, 6 years sounds a lot better than 10 to life for sure. So let's go for that. And then he ended up, him and his partner ended up adopting a baby, and then he went on paternity leave. So then I had to get a new lawyer, and this new lawyer that I got, I was like, I've never been in trouble before. Can we do like credit for time served? And she's like, sure, let's try. Oh, I like you, So I'm there. After I was in MCC, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm in MCC Federal for about 2-ish weeks. I don't know. I was on a very rough come down. I slept for like the first 7 days. I remember they called my name, and they took me, so they counted me out to the Chula Vista Police Department. So underneath the Chula Vista Police Department, there is a federal holding cell for women. And so for the next 8.5 months is where I spent, was in the basement. There were no windows. There was no yard. If we wanted to go outside, we had to play in the garage. So like did not get to see the sun for that long. so all of these things, like I had to get naked for them to take pictures of me at the border. And then, my mom doesn't answer. She tells me you're in a pickle. And then she hangs up. And my husband was not talking to me. He wasn't answering the phone. Probably because at this point he was really messed up and really, getting into a lot more drugs and doing some stuff. And then, I wasn't anymore. And so I kept trying to call my kids. At this time, my kids were 13 and 14 years old. And so I kept trying to call them and call them and call them. And after about 60 something days, my youngest son, Liam, he answered the phone. And I told him I was sorry. And he said, "It's okay, Mom." And I said, "But it's not." And he said, "Mom, you asked for my forgiveness, so I give it to you." And we never talked about it again after that. My oldest son, who's quite stubborn, his name is Hayden. He didn't answer. He finally answered on his 15th birthday. And this part, so every time I tell it, I get emotional. On his 15th birthday, he answers his phone and he's telling me how great his birthday is. And so I asked him if he could send me pictures of his birthday. And he said, "Yeah, Mom, what's your federal U.S. Marshal inmate number?" And that was it for me. That was my life waking moment. Because at that point, I was no longer a mom. I was just a number to my son. And this is the kid who made me a mom, and I worked my butt off to make sure that he had a good life. And even when I was in this very abusive relationship, the whole reason that I actually left that relationship was not because he beat me, not because he said foul things to me, but because he looked at my son Hayden and he called me a very terrible name, the C word, to my son's name. And that's when I decided to leave that relationship. And so, at that point I was like, this is it. This is not the life for me anymore. So as I'm there and the pandemic starts, we're in a basement. We don't get to see outside. We have no idea what's going on, and Trump is saying, "Oh, it's fine. Everything's fine. We'll be fine," and we're all of us females are getting all these emails from our family members saying like, "Oh, this is shut down now. This is shut down now." And so we're just like, what is going on out there? So all my court dates kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And again, we have no idea why. My mom and I started working on our relationship while I was there. And we had a very, very broken relationship. But while I was there, things started getting better between us. I, like a lot of people who go to prison or jail, found God, and I started going to NA meetings while I was there, and I became the prayer leader while I was there. And I found purpose for myself there, which is really weird, in a basement of a police department. I found purpose for myself again, and
You could write a book.
Yeah.
I found God in the basement.
Yep. And so, as I'm there, so the last amount of drugs I ever did was August 11th. I technically got booked in on August 12th. And so throughout these next 8.5 months, I miss everything. And when I say everything, I'm saying things I never missed before. I missed my kids' birthdays, my husband's birthdays, my mom's birthday, my dad's birthday, like my brother's birthdays, my siblings' birthday, everybody's birthdays, and all football practices, all like everything that I took for granted, I missed. And I kept telling myself, and I kept praying, like, do not let me be in here on my birthday. Do not let me be in here on my birthday. And I think sometime in March, it was actually when Utah had their big earthquake. My mom had messaged me and said, "Okay, you're going to have court." And so I call her and I said, "I'll believe it when I see it." And then yet again, it got pushed back. So I remember on April 2nd, she messaged me and she said, "Okay, you have court tomorrow." And I said, okay, whatever. April 3rd, it was a Friday morning at 4:30 in the morning. They wake me up to go to court. And I remember, so they took me from the police department to MCC Federal, because that's where the prison is, and that's where the federal courthouse is. And I remember I get in there, and if any of you have ever been to jail and have to go to court, you know that there's a lot of people usually back there with you. I was the only inmate there, the only one. And so...
Is this pandemic?
This is pandemic. This is April 3rd, 2020.
Okay.
So just
in the
middle of it. And again, I have no idea what's going on. This is so foreign and weird to me. And so they walk me into the courtroom, and, everybody has to wear a mask. And there's a guy at the podium with 2 cell phones, and I look and it's not my lawyer. My lawyer got COVID. And I'm like, oh no, here we go again. And so the 2 cell phones, he had my mom on one cell phone and he had my lawyer on the other cell phone. And I remember my lawyer telling me when she would come in and have meetings with me that my judge hates sarcasm. Okay. Because that's my love language. I didn't know how I was going to make it through this without being sarcastic, but she advised me just yes, sir, no, sir, and you just be polite and only speak when you're spoken to. I'm like, okay, I can do that. So the guy that was standing in for my lawyer, had pulled up everything in my history. Like I'd never been in trouble. I always had a job. And so he was asking, credit for time served. And then he threw in 200 hours of community service, feeding or helping homeless addicts so that I could see where I could have been. And so the judge granted it. Credit for time served.
Wow.
As of April 6th, though. So this was a Friday. As of April 6th, credit for time served. And then, but you will be on 6 months of in-home incarceration. And I'm thinking, cool, ankle monitor. Sure, I can do that. So I get back to the facility and all of my stuff had been moved into the medical unit. Now, I'm not going to lie and tell you, like, it was a terrible 8.5 months. It was not. We had phones in our cells. We had TVs in our cells. Like, it wasn't too terrible, except for we didn't have a kitchen. All of our food was brought to us, and the food was terrible. I will never eat a bean again, ever. But I get there, and this is the only cell with no phone. I'm like, how am I supposed to call my mom? Because my mom, bless her heart, is going to buy me a plane ticket to come home. And so there's an officer there. Her name was Officer Jackson, and she was the sweetest ever. She was literally on her cell phone with my mom, text messaging through the glass for me so that we could get this figured out. And so April 6th rolls around. By the way, April 6th is my birthday. So I got to get out on my birthday. And I actually found out last week so the lady who came and picked me up to take me to the airport, she was my lawyer's paralegal. And she stopped at Starbucks and got me a coffee and a cake pop. And I like all the time I talk about it and how grateful I am. Like I hadn't had good coffee. And my mom finally admitted to me last week that she gave the lady money to buy me coffee and a cake pop. So I remember I get to the airport and there's nobody in the airport. And I traveled a lot when I was a kid, back and forth to Las Vegas with my grandparents. And I always flew and I've been on planes. And so to see an airport, just crickets. And an airport in San Diego with nothing was crazy to me. And I remember I get on the plane and there's one person, 6 rows, another person, me, and 6 rows. And then the U.S. Marshal that had to fly with me because I had to have a voucher that said, I'm only allowed in the airport from this time to this time, get on this plane, get to this airport, and then have to be off of that airport property at this time.
And then home to your home arrest.
And then home to wherever my home arrest is. So I get off the plane. My mom stops at In-N-Out so I can see my kids because I hadn't seen my kids. And then, she takes me to where I'm going. And I had this friend, if you will, I got a 1-bedroom apartment. I'll sleep on the couch. You can sleep here. I'm clean. I'm sober. All is well. Great. Thank you. That would be so fantastic. So I get to his house. And I remember walking in, and again, it's my birthday, and he said, oh, I made you a birthday dinner. I said, oh, that was very nice of you. It was spaghetti. I'm gluten intolerant, and I hate spaghetti, but thank you. I appreciate the effort. But I remember walking in, and he had this big machete on his wall, and he, showed it to my mom. My mom was like, what are you doing? And I was like, apparently this friend is not the friend I thought he was. So the next day, we came right here to the federal building, and I checked in with my PO, and he told me that for the next 6 months, I could not have a job. What do you mean I can't have a job? Like I have UAs that I have to pay for. I have MRT therapy that I have to pay for. I have all these classes that I have to pay for. Like, what do you mean I can't have a job? Figure it out. Okay, what about my community service? Nope, you can't do that either. You can only leave your house to go to doctor's appointments and to go to your therapy and to do this and this and this. So we get back to this apartment. By the way, it wasn't a 1-bedroom. It was a studio apartment. So I slept on the floor.
We only have about 4 minutes left.
Oh, dang it.
I want to hear how how your life turned out and where you're working now.
Okay.
So if you can.
Oh, yeah, sure. Anyway, so long story short, I end up moving to Brigham City and on in-home incarceration for 6 months. October 7th, 2020, I got my ankle monitor off and I started working at Wasatch Recovery on October 17th. And I started as a part-time line staff, Graves, and I've worked my way up and now I'm outpatient operations and I'm starting school to be a therapist on August 20th. My husband and I just got married. We're both clean and sober. We both just, we're thriving. Him and our friend just started their own business. And yeah, that was it. It was that one phone call with my son while I was in prison that just said, you are never going to touch drugs again.
Now, was the drugs you did at the Starbucks before you went down for your last?
That was it. That was the last time.
Last time.
That was the very last time. Yep.
Oh, well. So you didn't get sober in a Starbucks, but that's where you. Oh.
Yeah. It was Starbucks and God. There it was.
And then you got out of jail and
got Starbucks.
I love it.
Yep.
So basically, you found sobriety in the federal prison.
Yes, I did.
Right.
Yes, I did.
And God.
Yep, I did.
So what's sobriety like compared to being high all the time?
I love it. I love because I can feel things, and I get to have all of these relationships that I broke myself. I get to have a great relationship with my parents, with my kids, with my husband, with just my whole family that I was not allowed around because I was a shady person, And now, it is the most beautiful life. And I am so grateful for my addiction. I do not regret ever getting high. I don't regret anything that I ever did because I wouldn't be who I am today without it, And now that whole 200 hours of community service, I ended up doing it with BAM, Beyond Addiction Mosaic. And that kind of sprinkled out. And now I'm doing my own nonprofit, and we call it 2%. And then once a month we go out and we feed our homeless addicts. So it's just, I don't know, it all gave me purpose in life.
And people, if you're watching this, it's like you look at you and you would say, well, she doesn't look like a meth dealer. you know what I mean?
I know. I have all my teeth.
Blonde, clean cut. Yeah. So, and which goes to show that really it affects people of all walks of life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yep.
How can people get involved with your helping the homeless?
So I am on a few different social media platforms. I've got my Facebook, my TikTok, my Instagram, and it's an open, everybody can follow it. And every day I give like a notable quotable is what I call them. And usually I let people know when it's going to happen. And it's usually the third Saturday of the month. And we just, Mark, the owner of Wasatch, is so nice to let me use the outpatient building to get together and make sack lunches. And people are invited to come. And then we all caravan downtown.
Okay.
And just go feed them.
How do people find you on social media?
Either my name, Charisse Goll, or
Gull.
Gull.
Charisse. Cherice.
Good job. Good job. Or if you hashtag notable quotable, all of them will pop up.
Wow.
So,
okay.
Yep.
Life is good.
Life is beautiful.
Thank you for sharing your story.
Of course.
Because it's, for people watching who have loved ones dealing with addiction, whatever it takes to find the road to recovery, hopefully not federal prison, but
forgiveness. That's what it takes. You got to forgive yourself, and you've got to show people that you are forgivable.
Thanks, Charisse.
You're welcome.
Good to see you again, Nicole.
You too.
And thank you for watching another edition or listening to another edition of Odyssey House Journals.